On the morning of my 70th birthday, the doorbell rang at precisely 8:17. My family hadn't expressed any plans to come, so I wasn't expecting anyone, but as I brushed my cardigan and headed for the door, a glimmer of optimism appeared. On my porch was a teenage delivery lad with a little bunch of obviously faded roses. The margins of half the petals were already turning brown. "Delivery for Eleanor Jenkins," he whispered as he pushed the flowers in my direction without looking at me. I accepted the melancholy little arrangement and murmured, "Thank you." Halfway down my walkway, the boy was already eager to get out of the embarrassing situation of delivering what was clearly a last-minute, required gift. After looking inside for a card, I discovered a tiny envelope nestled among the withering flowers. The handwriting, which had stiff, angular strokes, matched that of my daughter-in-law Patricia. "Mom, happy birthday. Patricia, Andrew, love, and the children." 5 words. Don't use an exclamation point. My youngster didn't even sign it properly. I set the flower next to the little cake I had purchased for myself the day before on my kitchen table. Of her 75 years on this planet, 48 were married to Richard, and 9 were his widow. My birthday had devolved into a scene of withered roses and quiet in a once lively home. A video call was ringing on my phone. I saw Andrew's face on the television, his flawless white teeth shining in what I knew to be his client's smile, professional, rehearsed, and completely lacking in real warmth. "Mom, happy birthday." He spoke too loudly and too cheerfully. With her blonde highlights freshly applied and high-end sunglasses resting on her head, Patricia leaned into the picture. "Thank you, dear," I said, researching their history. They were in what looked like a living room, but something didn't feel quite right. "What's going on at home?" "Oh, I'm as busy as ever. While the children are in school, we're just..." Behind them, a waiter in a white shirt emerged, setting down 2 espresso cups while conversing quickly in French. "Voilà, madame, monsieur. Du café." Before he recovered, Andrew's face briefly froze. "Regards. We placed an order for coffee delivery. There's a new service in town." He tilted the telephone away from the cafe's distinctively European atmosphere. How practical. Even though the realization hit me hard, I spoke steadily. "And to what precise location is this local service doing delivery?" Patricia's laugh was brittle as she plunged in. "Well, today Andrew is working from home. The house is where we are." Someone lifted a curtain behind them, and as if on cue, the Eiffel Tower emerged in the window. "I see," I muttered. "Does your garden now have the Eiffel Tower? Or did you go on a trip that you failed to mention?" The phone hung up. I couldn't tell if that was deliberate or the result of a bad connection. However, the reality was obvious. On my birthday, my family lied to me about being in Paris. I opened my laptop, the one Andrew claimed I was too technologically unsavvy to use correctly, with hands that refused to shake in spite of the pain blossoming in my chest. I was able to access my bank account online with just 3 clicks. The withdrawals were made right away. My accounts were used to pay for first-class tickets to Paris, upscale hotel reservations, Michelin-starred restaurants, $12,000 2 weeks ago, and $5,000 last week. I scrolled backwards. Large withdrawals under the pretense of property upkeep or investment transfers had been the pattern for months. As I meticulously planned my daily expenses, I felt my retirement assets were naturally depleting as they were gradually depleted to support my son's lifestyle. Waves of nausea swept over me as the realization struck. Andrew had been stealing from me on a regular basis. He was my only child, the youngster I had nursed through pneumonia, the teenager I had assisted through his father's severe discipline, and the man whose law school career I had helped finance when Richard died. Not only money, either. My dignity had been taken by him. My safety. My confidence. Andrew texted me, and my phone buzzed. "I apologize, Mom. Poor connection." The call ended. "Enjoy your birthday. Next week, when we return from our business trip, we'll celebrate. Travel for work." The deception went on. I put the phone down and made my way to my husband's study, the one place I had left exactly as Richard had left it, with the wall of leather-bound law volumes and the massive oak desk where he had worked on cases. The picture of us together on our 40th wedding anniversary. To the empty room, I murmured, "They think I'm a fool, Richard. Our kid believes that I am a frail elderly woman who is blind to being robbed." I ran my fingers over Richard's book spines. First editions of legal classics, some valued at thousands of dollars, that Andrew had written off as antiquated when he had proposed selling the house. I located the little key Richard had given me before he passed away, which was hidden behind the full set of Justice Holmes' judgments. "Your eyes are still sharp, but your voice is weak," Ellie commented when you turned 75. "You told me not a day earlier." I didn't comprehend. So why is the exact age important? Now, as my son's betrayal raged in my chest, I realized it was time. The tiny wall safe beneath Richard's picture opened, and within was a sealed envelope with my name in my husband's signature script, a flash drive, and a business card for a retired federal prosecutor called Victor Harmon. A social media alert from Patricia's account buzzed on my phone as I was holding the package. I opened it with shaking fingers and saw a picture of my family, including Patricia's mother, Andrew, my teenage grandchildren, and Patricia. "Finally taking that European vacation we've always dreamed of," the caption said, raising champagne glasses aboard a Seine River cruise. "The most amazing journey ever. Family time." As I burst the seal on my husband's letter, my homemade sandwich from my 75th birthday lunch sat forgotten on the kitchen counter. The moment had arrived for whatever Richard had prepared or safeguarded. They believed they were interacting with a defenseless elderly woman. They were going to learn their mistake. Click the subscribe button now if the betrayal of this family is already making you furious. You won't want to miss Eleanor's quest for justice's next turn. As I opened the pages of Richard's letter, my hands shook. His handwriting reminded me of him so clearly that I could practically smell his sandalwood aftershave. "If you are reading this, my lovely Eleanor, you are 75 years old, and I have been away for a while. I hope you have been kind to me during these years. But I worry that they might not have been, knowing our son as I do." With my heart racing, I collapsed into Richard's leather chair. Andrew has always been intelligent but feeble, susceptible to being swayed by wealth and prestige. Patricia merely made these inclinations worse. During my last years, I observed his transformation, how he valued our possessions rather than who we were, and how he measured what we had. I needed Andrew to think he had access to everything, so I made plans, Ellie, safeguards I couldn't share with you while I was alive. Only a small portion of our actual inheritance is represented in the accounts he has been handling since my passing. I gasped. Richard said what? Andrew's constant dismissal of my studies' first editions as useless antiquated literature? The little Berkshire's property we bought under my mother's maiden name is worth an additional $2 million in today's market, and they are insured for $4.3 million. The included card is for Victor Harmon's investment portfolio, which is currently worth about $8 million. None of this is mentioned in Andrew's final will. The accounts he has been handling for you don't give you access to any of it. Shock rushing through me, I put a palm to my mouth. Andrew had no knowledge of the shadow estate that Richard, my diligent, justice-driven husband, had established. Victor was supposed to tell you this only when you turned 75, as I had stipulated. Andrew would be forced to reveal his actual self at an age I determined. By now, if my assessment of our kid is accurate, he will have started to gradually deplete what he perceives to be your whole wealth. Confident that you're too naive or trusting to notice. Tears of vindication, not sadness, streamed down my cheeks. Richard had anticipated it. He had gotten to know our son better than I had. Speak with Victor right away. He has all the paperwork required to deny Andrew access to your accounts and, if required, to start legal action. With my customary attention to detail, the flash drive has comprehensive records of every transaction from our accounts for the previous 15 years. My dear, I apologize for this complex deception. I hoped Andrew would show me that I was mistaken. Maybe you won't ever need to hear these words if he has been a loving son who has taken care of you the way we taught him to. However, otherwise, recall the steel in your backbone that initially attracted me to you, Ellie, the quiet brilliance that so many mistakenly believe to be passivity. Now is the moment to demonstrate your true self to them. Richard, forever yours. My thoughts were racing as I put the letter down. I had thought for all these years that I was surviving on a meager income, carefully allocating what was left over from Richard's court pension and our meager savings. Even that smaller sum had been being drained by Andrew in the meantime, forcing me to forego minor luxuries while he and Patricia used my money to take lavish trips. And a wealth had been waiting all along, shielded by Richard's prescience. I studied the embossed wording on Victor Harmon's card. This individual had been quietly handling millions on my behalf for 9 years, waiting for this exact day, based on the date on Richard's letter. Another social media notification buzzed through my phone. This time, my grandson Jason shared a picture of himself mockingly standing next to an old woman's statue from the Louvre. "Found Grandma's long-lost twin," was his caption. "I feel like an old lady." Vacation in Europe. The casual harshness has a profound effect. Just last year, I assisted Jason with his college applications, taught him to read, and went to every baseball game even when Andrew and Patricia were too busy. In this way, he viewed me as merely an elderly woman to be ridiculed, whose assets were available for his use. I grabbed my phone and punched in Victor's card number. The second ring was answered by a deep, measured voice. "Probably Eleanor Jenkins. I was anticipating your call. Have you? Mrs. Jenkins, for 9 years. Regarding the date, your husband was quite particular." A pause occurred. "Have you read Richard's letter, I assume?" "Yes," I replied, my voice getting louder. "And I need your assistance." "Naturally." Richard had done a lot of preparation for this. "I propose that we get together right now. Accounts must be transferred to your sole control, certain agreements must be signed, and a number of issues need to be addressed right away. When can we get together?" "If it's convenient for you, I can arrive at your house in an hour." 1 hour. Within an hour, things would start to change after my own child had progressively plundered me for 9 years. I made a quick judgment and said, "There's something more. Someone who can track down exactly what has been taken and how it has been spent is what I need, a forensic accountant." Victor said, "It's already arranged," and I could hear the smile in his voice. Richard considered every possibility. When it came to what to have ready for your 75th birthday, his instructions were extremely detailed. I hung up, went back to Richard's study, and started looking at the bookshelves with fresh eyes. Many of the first editions were signed and gathered over many years of meticulous collecting. Books Andrew kept telling me to declutter by donating or selling at garage sale prices. I received an email notification on my laptop. Andrew included a picture of the family having supper in what seemed like a classy Parisian restaurant along with a brief birthday message. I never saw my grandchildren dressed like this before. Andrew wore an exquisite watch that probably cost more than I permitted myself for 6 months' worth of living expenses, while Patricia showed off a sparkling diamond bracelet. Even via the screen, the message's insincerity was evident as it ended, "Wish you were here, Mom." The irony made me smile thinly. They were unaware that I would be there, not in person, but through the impending financial reckoning that would ruin their vacation that they had stolen. An hour after I called, the doorbell rang. A stately man in his 50s, with silver hair and a leather briefcase that looked as expensive as it was worn, was standing on my porch, visible through the glass. The first step toward justice had come with Victor Harmon. "Before I go any further, remember to join our special story group, where you will receive ad-free additional content sent directly to your phone, even if you don't have internet. To become a member of our listening community, simply view the pinned comment below." When I opened the door to welcome Victor, I sensed Richard standing next to me, pushing me on. The days of being the underappreciated, forgotten old mother were past. The judge's wife, librarian, curator, and obviously billionaire Eleanor Jenkins was going to reveal to her family just who they had been stealing from. "Mrs. Jenkins, your husband was an extraordinary man." With practiced accuracy, Victor Harmon laid out paperwork on my dining room table. Although he had an unmatched legal intellect, what really distinguished him was his understanding of human nature. I read the papers that came before me. Investment portfolios, property documents, account statements, and physical evidence of Richard's complex security measures. I traced my finger over a trust document dated 2 weeks prior to Richard's death and whispered that he had foreseen everything. Victor nodded solemnly, wondering even how Andrew would respond if he were granted access to what he believed to be our whole estate. 11 years ago, Judge Jenkins got in touch with me because he was worried about your son's financial conduct. He had observed minor irregularities, small sums being taken out of accounts Andrew had started to assist with. Even before Richard passed away, the treachery had begun. The information became as solid as ice in my gut. Victor said, the judge was very methodical. He started moving money to sheltered accounts, setting up the trust for me to oversee, and keeping track of all questionable transactions. He gave a folder a tap. There is a lot of damaging evidence. My throat constricted. My own son. Unfortunately, Mrs. Jenkins, financial abuse of elderly parents is a very common occurrence. No one would ever suspect, even in families. Victor's professional manner softened slightly. In addition to wanting to keep you safe, Richard also wanted to offer Andrew an opportunity to disprove him. By holding off until my 75th birthday. That's right. It allowed Andrew the opportunity to either prove his credibility or, as he tactfully trailed off, expose himself as a thief. I finished bluntly. Victor nodded. The first stage is achieving your immediate financial independence. I've made the necessary documents to take away Andrew's power of attorney and give you complete control over all accounts. As I signed paper after document, a signal pinged on my phone, an automatic alert from my credit card, a $3,700 charge at a designer store in Paris, Patricia, no doubt, having another shopping spree with my apparently declining cash. They're clueless about what's ahead, are they? Almost to myself, I asked. No, Victor said. Richard also wants you to be aware of one more thing today. He took one last document out of his briefcase. It has to do with the collection in the library. I scowled. Richard studies initial editions? The complete Jenkins collection in the Savannah Rare Books repository, not just those. My expression must have conveyed my bewilderment. You were unaware. Victor understood. 15 years ago, Richard created a specialist collection at the repository. Historical papers, rare legal writings, and first editions. He's been discreetly building it for years under a blind trust. It is currently worth more than $10 million. There was a slight tilt to the room. 10 million? Within books? Richard had an expert's eye and was an avid collector. He used his connections in the legal system to obtain items that most collectors would never be able to obtain. Victor grinned. Additionally, he designated you as the only trustee, officially known as the head curator. My eyes welled up with tears. In addition to providing me with financial stability, Richard had given me a career that reflected my lifelong passion for literature and preservation. Next week is the board meeting. They can't wait to meet the enigmatic Mrs. Jenkins, who will be taking over the collection's management. My eyes were wiped. Blown away by Richard's devotion and foresight. He had managed to preserve my feeling of purpose and my financial stability even from the hereafter. Now, we need to talk about how you want to handle the situation with Andrew, Victor remarked in a more formal tone. We can choose from a number of choices. Tell me. We could file criminal accusations for fraud and financial elder abuse. Given the facts, a lengthy jail sentence is probably in order. He waited to see how I would respond. As an alternative, we may seek civil remedies to recover the stolen money without facing criminal charges. I also suggested that we face him in private with the evidence first, then base our decision on his response. I thought carefully about my alternatives, remembering the son who had been stealing from me for years, the daughter-in-law who sent me wilting flowers as an afterthought, and the grandson who made fun of me by comparing me to an old statue. However, I also remembered the young child Andrew used to be, holding my hand while we strolled around the park and gazed up at me with Richard's eyes. When he finds out what Richard knew, I decided I wanted to see his face. Based on my knowledge, I wanted to find out if anything remains of the son we reared. Victor gave a nod. A fight, then. We need to be well prepared. My phone flashed up with another notice as we planned. Creating lifelong memories is the description Andrew wrote for a family photo he posted from the Eiffel Tower. Family comes first. If it weren't so terrible, the irony would have been hilarious. Our plans was interrupted by a knock on the door. When I opened it, I saw a small woman with dark hair streaked with gray and keen eyes that didn't miss anything. I'm Diana Reeves, the forensic accountant Victor hired, Mrs. Jenkins. A laptop bag was hefted by her. I was aware that we needed to look into some financial irregularities. I opened the door for her and introduced her to Victor. Diana quickly set up her PC and connected a tiny gadget to my laptop. According to her, this will extract the transaction history and banking details. I've already seen a number of questionable trends in the preliminary data Victor gave. She swept her fingers across the keyboard. Traditional indicators of organized financial abuse. Recurring withdrawals that are passed off as reasonable costs. Transfers to accounts to which you are not privy. Charges on your credit card for things you'll never use. Like Parisian designer boutiques? I asked sardonically. Diana gave a nod. That's right. Additionally, upscale dining establishments, golf club memberships, and luxury timepieces. She looked up. I don't mean to offend, Mrs. Jenkins, but you don't seem like a serious golfer who enjoys eating meals that cost $500. I told her there were none taken. Victor was called to the corner of the room while Diana was working. His face was grim yet content when he came back. Mrs. Jenkins, that was my contact at your bank. Andrew's access has been removed, and all accounts have been successfully stopped. All outstanding transactions have been stopped, including a number of sizable ones that were started within the last day. I inhaled deeply. Therefore, when they try to make their next purchase while they are still in Europe, they will probably find out that the accounts are frozen within a few hours. Although Victor's tone was impartial from a professional standpoint, I could sense a tinge of satisfaction. My phone started ringing almost instantly. The screen flashed Andrew's name. Diana whispered just in time. I was instantly uncertain as I gazed at the phone. This call would be the opening shot in a conflict that I had not wanted but was now unable to avoid. It would be impossible to return to the cozy fiction that my son valued me as more than a source of income once I responded. You don't have to respond, Victor kindly reminded me. Like Andrew himself, the phone kept ringing, demanding and persistent. Richard had told me that I felt steel in my spine, so I straightened my shoulders. I had learned something about bravery and advocating for myself from my 75 years of experience. The moment had come to apply those teachings. I reached for the phone and said, "Oh, I'm going to answer." Not yet, though. Shall we give him a little more time to stew? I'm simply a bewildered old lady, I continued with a tiny, determined smile. Most likely, I'm not even aware that the phone is ringing. Victor and Diana looked at each other with approval as I hung up the phone and listened calmly to 3 more calls from Andrew come in quick succession. I was the one setting the rules for the first time in years, and the game had altered. Your opinions on Eleanor's predicament would be greatly appreciated. Have you or a loved one ever been taken advantage of financially by family members? If you're enjoying Eleanor's path to justice, please remember to like this video and share your experiences in the comments section below. I decided that it was time after 6 missed calls. I gave Victor a nod, and he stood next to me, prepared to record the exchange. Diana kept working, but she looked up and smiled encouragingly at me. I turned on the speakerphone by pressing the answer button. Hi there. I purposefully spoke in a low, bewildered tone, just as Andrew had anticipated his aging mother would sound. At last, Mom. Every syllable of Andrew's voice vibrated with strain as it blasted through the speaker. The accounts aren't working properly. They're refusing the cards. Each and every one. Oh dear, I whispered. That sounds like a serious situation. It's serious, he was on the verge of yelling. We're in. He stopped himself. I'm attempting to manage some significant transactions, but nothing is completing. The accounts are frozen, according to the bank. Frozen, I said, adding a tone of helpless confusion. For what reason would they be frozen? I want you to do that. He was losing control. Have you visited the bank? Have you discussed our finances with anyone? Our money. With its bold assumption, the possessive pronoun hung in the air. Now that you bring it up, I did talk to a very helpful man today regarding some documents that required my signature, I added slowly. What documents? Andrew's voice grew apprehensive. Who was this individual? My name is Victor, he said. Harmon Victor. I looked at Victor, who had a neutral expression on his face as he recorded the call. Richard was someone he knew. The ensuing quiet was so intense that I could hear Parisian street sounds in the distance. Andrew's voice was strangely flat as he repeated, Victor Harmon. Did he express his desires? Richard established a trust, I see. And accounts that I was unaware of. I stopped, purposefully. And millions of dollars worth of books. Andrew, isn't it amazing? You've been telling me for years to get rid of these books. There was a longer hush this time. Andrew's tone had completely shifted by the time he spoke again. He tried to persuade me to sign paperwork without reading them in a gentler, more convincing tone. Pay close attention, Mom. Harmon, this man is not who he says he is. I never heard of him from Dad. This implies that he is probably a scammer who preys on elderly people who are at risk. Victor arched an eyebrow, but said nothing. Is that correct? I said softly. Of course. These con artists are highly skilled. They investigate families, find out personal information, and then use fanciful tales to win people over. Andrew was finally becoming receptive to his story. You must give the bank a call right now and grant me access again. I'll immediately take a plane home to resolve this. Take a plane home? I pretended to be perplexed. Where is it from, sweetheart? I assumed you were at home. I could see he had forgotten his own lie by the brief hesitancy. I had to travel for work in an emergency. See, that isn't significant at the moment. The important thing is to keep you safe from this Harmon individual. What about the accounts? The frozen ones? I'll make sure everything is safe once I get access again. His tone softened even more, adopting the condescending tone I had come to despise. Mom, you are aware of your lack of financial knowledge. Dad put me in charge of everything because of this. Did he? A tinge of hardness crept into my voice. Andrew, did Richard do that? Put me under your control? He must have been alarmed by something in my voice. Mom? What's happening? With whom are you there? It turns out that Victor Harmon and Diana Reeves, a forensic accountant who has been following every penny you have taken from me for the past 9 years, are still here. Even the speaker on the phone could hear the sudden intake of breath. You're confused, Mom. No, Andrew. I'm seeing perfectly clear for the first time in years. I sat up straight in my chair and completely stopped playing the weak old lady. Did you have fun today at the Louvre? And Patricia's Chanel buying binge? Victor froze the accounts just before the accusations were received. This is ridiculous. These folks are obviously manipulating you. Your father appointed these individuals, as you refer to them. Richard witnessed your transformation. He expected you to do everything. Andrew's tone became icy. I know exactly how much you've taken, regardless of what you believe. I cut you off. According to Diana's initial investigation, $347,000 was transferred from accounts you had fiduciary responsibility for during the previous 9 years. Andrew, that's not only unethical. It's illegal. Diana looked up from her computer and gave a firm nod, saying, You can't prove anything. Yes, we could. I told him that every transaction is recorded. Every dime was tracked down. In that sense, Richard was systematic, a quality you obviously did not inherit. Suddenly, he remarked, Patricia's mother requires medical care. Changing strategies. Money for the children's college. Business failures. You're not aware of the pressures we face. Are there pressures to justify lavish vacations? Designer shopping binges? Falsehoods regarding your whereabouts on my birthday? My tone became stern. Where is Andrew, my granddaughter? Is Emily in Paris with you? What I had suspected was confirmed by the guilty silence. The social media pictures didn't include Emily, my quietest grandchild and the bookish one who still came to see me frequently. They had stolen my money to finance their European adventure, leaving her behind. Finally, he mumbled, Emily had summer courses. She was unable to escape. She might also decline to take part in the charade. With increased power, I said, here's what happens now, in a calm voice. All of my accounts will no longer be accessible to you. Your abusive power of attorney has been revoked. We will meet with Victor and Diana to go about restitution possibilities when you get back from the vacation that my retirement paid for. Compensation? He sounded truly surprised. You're not serious. We are related. Indeed, we are, which makes your treachery much more abhorrent. I took a moment to let the gravity of the situation sink in. Andrew, have a great rest of your journey. I advise you to reserve a less expensive hotel. A substantial reduction has been made to your credit limit. Hold on, Mom. Despite my determined tone, my palm trembled a little as I finished the call. I've been carefully conditioned and manipulated for 9 years to make me doubt who I am and feel reliant. Everything falling apart in a single exchange. Good job, Mrs. Jenkins, Victor muttered. Diana gave a nod of consent. It was impressive. The majority of financial exploitation victims find it difficult to deal with their abusers head-on. The firmness in my voice surprised me as I said, I'm not most victims. Furthermore, I am no longer a victim. My phone started ringing again right away. Andrew, then Patricia, then again Andrew. I went to my new companions and silenced it. What follows? Victor looked at his notes. The accounts are safe. To keep an eye on your house while Andrew is abroad, I have hired a security company. We have a meeting with the Jenkins Collections directors tomorrow to formally establish your function. I strongly stated that the decision about the legal action against your son could wait. I'd like to see my granddaughter Emily first. Diana raised her head from her screen. These documents indicate that she is enrolled in Savannah College's summer literary courses. It's only 20 minutes to campus. With a plan in place, I nodded. Excellent. Don't you think it's time Emily found out about her literary heritage? Eventually, the Jenkins collection will require a new curator. As Victor organized the meetings for tomorrow, I couldn't help but think of Richard's study and the books Andrew had written down as useless. I felt their importance again as I ran my fingertips along their spines, not just as priceless items, but also as representations of Richard's affection and thoughtfulness. I received a text message from an unidentified number on my phone. Hey, it's Emily, Aunt. Dad is frantically phoning everyone. Are you all right? Are you able to see me? It was the first time on my birthday that anyone in my family had truly cared about me. Maybe it wasn't all lost after all. Yes, sweetheart, I said. We have a lot to discuss, and I'm more than okay. It was exactly 7 o'clock that night when someone knocked on my door. I instantly recognized the 3 soft raps as Emily's. In contrast to her parents' or brother's impatient hammering. Emily's touch had always been delicate and thoughtful, but she knocked authoritatively. My granddaughter was standing on the porch when I opened the door, her dark hair pulled back in an untidy bun, her glasses a little off balance, and, as usual, an enormous canvas bag slung over her shoulder, probably full of books. Grandma. She exhaled, her face flushed with relief. You're doing fine. I opened my arms and told her, of course I am. She stepped into my arms and held me close. In a whisper, she said, Happy birthday. I really regret not showing up sooner. Dad's texts weren't visible to me until an hour ago because I spent the entire day in the library. Observing the tension in her shoulders and the shadows beneath her eyes, I ushered her inside. Have you not been caught in the midst of something? With a sigh, Emily set her suitcase down on the ground, handling it as though it were something she treasured. Dad gave me 6 calls. He sounds desperate. Something about being taken advantage of and having your accounts frozen. She gave me a direct glance. However, that isn't the situation, is it? I replied, no, and led her to the living room, where tea was waiting. Actually, just the reverse. I looked at my granddaughter's face as we sat on the couch. It looked much like Richard's, with the same resolute chin and contemplative eyes. Emily was the only one of my grandchildren to acquire not only his appearance but also his morals, love of books, and character. His gentle love of fairness. She added abruptly, they're in Paris. Dad, Mom, Michael, Jason, and even Grandma Patricia. I am aware. They informed me that you were aware of the last-minute business travel. In her lap, she curled her hands. However, I was invited weeks ago. Since I was aware that it was your birthday and I didn't understand why they would arrange a vacation at this time, I declined. I was immediately drawn to this considerate young lady. My birthday was something you didn't want to miss. Obviously not. Emily seems perplexed that there would even be a query. However, I discovered that they had been organizing this for months after Jason shared those pictures from the Louvre. They left you on your birthday and lied to me. Her voice cracked a little. I poured the tea, allowing myself a minute to determine how much to distribute, evidently using your money based on Dad's words. Even though Emily was an adult at the age of 21, she was still torn between her moral convictions and her parental allegiance. Since Grandpa passed away, your father has been handling my money, I started out cautiously. I learned today that he has been routinely taking money for himself for years. The most recent example is the trip to Europe. Emily's expression dimmed. I feared it was something along those lines. Lately, Dad has been strange. More covert. Mom continues to purchase pricey items and then behaves strangely when I inquire about them. She put her teacup down. I heard them argue last month about upholding appearances and meeting expectations, even if it meant temporarily taking out loans from Mom's accounts. I repeated dryly, temporarily. 9 years is a long, short-term commitment. 9 years? Emily appeared stunned. Ever after Grandpa passed away? All this time, they have been stealing from you? After nodding, I concluded Emily deserved to know the whole truth. Your grandfather foresaw this, which is what your father is unaware of and what he learned today when the funds were blocked. He established a distinct estate. It was far bigger than Andrew had imagined, and he made arrangements for me to be shown it on my 75th birthday. Emily's gaze expanded. Grandpa set up a trap. Maybe it's a test, I corrected lightly. First, your father was a complete failure. And now? I've now blocked him from accessing my accounts. I'm securing everything and looking into my legal alternatives with the support of the man your grandfather appointed to oversee the trust. After hesitating, I added. Emily, there could be major repercussions for your father. I wanted to share it with you first. She silently took this in, her face not surprised but serious. What do you need from me, Grandma? She finally said. I was profoundly moved by the question. No, how could you harm my dad like this? Or perhaps there was only a simple offer of assistance and a misunderstanding. She would have made Richard very proud. In fact, I said, I want to show you something. I got up and motioned for her to come to Richard's study with me. During family visits, Emily would frequently curl up with one of her grandfather's novels in the corner armchair since she had always cherished this area. As I described the first editions, the valuation, and the broader collection at the Savannah Rare Books Repository, she now surveyed the area with renewed admiration. She ran her fingers lovingly down a shelf and muttered, $10 million in rare books. And Dad wants you to have a garage sale to sell these? I said that your father had never appreciated the worth of items that weren't instantly convertible to cash. Richard was aware of that. That's why he put the collection in a trust and appointed me as its curator. Emily turned to face me, a sudden understanding shining in her eyes. Do you want my assistance with the collecting as well? Maybe someday, if you're interested. After all, you're studying library science and literature. I grinned at her look of surprise. Although your father dismissed your double major as unfeasible, I am aware of it. She acknowledged that her father suggested that she change to a field with real job opportunities, like business or pre-law. I informed her that Richard and I had always supported pursuing one's passion. For many centuries to come, the Jenkins collection will require devoted stewards who recognize the cultural and economic worth of the items we have conserved. With fresh eyes, Emily surveyed the study and saw not only cherished books but also a legacy. A goal. I would be honored to find out, she added quietly. What about Dad, though? When they return from Europe, what happens? With the weight of that unavoidable meeting bearing down on me, I let out a sigh. We'll have to wait and see. When your father returns, a lot will rely on his reaction, including whether he expresses sincere regret or acknowledges the harm he has caused. Emily said he would be upset. Mom will be terrible, too. For that, I'm ready. I stood up straight, sensing the inner strength Richard had always recognized in me. I've had enough of being the handy ATM and the quiet grandma who doesn't ask why her retirement money disappears as her family takes a vacation without her. Emily gave me a spontaneous hug. Grandma, I'm very sorry they did this to you. I should have known something wasn't right. I gave her another hug and informed her that you were the only one who had remembered my birthday without being asked. And instead of taking part in their deceit, you decided to remain behind. Emily, that's important. The following hour was devoted to talking about the collection of rare books and the next meeting with the repository board. I was amazed by Emily's knowledge. It was evident that she had been researching cataloging and preservation methods that would be useful for the collection's future. Her phone kept buzzing as she got ready to depart. Once more, Andrew. The more hours the account stayed frozen, the more desperate they must have become. She looked at the screen and said, I don't know what to say to him. I told her she didn't have to say anything just yet. Your father and I are involved in this matter. You have no responsibility for his behavior or for resolving the fallout. With a grateful nod, Emily opened her canvas bag. I nearly forgot. I have something for you. She gave me a neatly wrapped parcel. Grandma, happy birthday. Jane Austen's collected works were in a beautifully bound volume. It was a well-chosen gift from a granddaughter who was aware of her grandmother's preferences, not a rare first edition. It's flawless. Sincerely touched, I said. I'm grateful, Emily. When she was gone, I went back to Richard's study and set Emily's present on his desk. I told the empty room, you were right about her, Richard. She is honest like you. Your passion for education. We were let down by Andrew, but Emily? Emily gives me hope. Andrew texted me again, then my phone rang. Since our confrontation call, this is his 10th. This miscommunication is awful. I'm cutting the trip short with Patricia. In 2 days, we'll return home to settle everything. Before we speak, please don't take any hasty decisions. His phrase choice made me smile. After a lifetime of thoughtful consideration, rash would be summarizing what I had done. Rash would be permitting this abuse to go on for another day. No, I wasn't acting rashly at all. The time had long come. After sending Emily a text to confirm that we would be meeting at the repository tomorrow, I got ready for bed and laid out my clothing for my first day as the Jenkins Collection's official curator. It was time to assume the role Richard had meticulously created for me, not just as a protector of his financial legacy but also as a steward of something even more valuable, knowledge, history, and culture, after decades of prioritizing the needs of others over my own. When Andrew and Patricia returned in 2 days, they expected to find an elderly woman who was easily persuaded to comply again. Rather, they would encounter Eleanor Jenkins, a trustee and curator who, after years of deliberate devaluation, was regaining her influence. Allow them to arrive. At last, I was prepared. Located in a majestic Georgian structure downtown, the Savannah Rare Books Repository's red brick facade belied the riches it held. I experienced an odd mix of excitement and fear as Victor led Emily and me through the massive oak doors. Richard had been quietly curating this collection for years, and it was worth millions of dollars. It had been waiting for me. What a privilege it is to meet you at last, Mrs. Jenkins. Dr. Harriet Simmons, director of the repository, gave us a cordial welcome. During our acquisitions discussions, Judge Jenkins frequently mentioned you. Meetings for acquisitions? Startled, I repeated. Richard frequently visited here? I inquired. A minimum of once a month for 15 years. Dr. Simmons attested. He had a remarkable eye for first editions and rare legal literature. One of our greatest assets is the Jenkins collection. She guided us through security gates into a climate-controlled room with leather-bound books and illuminated manuscripts on display cases. A subdued brass inscription at the door said, "The Richard and Eleanor Jenkins Collection of Rare Legal and Literary Works." My name. He had often mentioned my name. "Please, this way." Dr. Simmons led us to the private collection mahogany door. "The board is anticipating your arrival." 8 individuals, renowned scholars and collectors who had reportedly been collaborating with Richard for years on a collection I was unaware of, stood up as we arrived. As though it had just happened, not 9 years ago, they shook my hand, greeted me with a respect that verged on reverence, and offered their sympathies for Richard's death. Everything has been kept up to the judge's requirements. An old man identified himself as the treasurer of the board. "I'm looking forward to the day you take over as chief curator." I finally understood the significance of the date. I whispered, "My 75th birthday." Richard had done more than keep Andrew away from our possessions. He had been putting together a plan for me, a cause to continue living after he was gone. Indeed, Dr. Simmons attested. The judge was very clear. Until you turned 75, the collection would be managed in an interim capacity. After that, you would have complete curatorial responsibility. I objected, but I'm not an expert on rare books. Dr. Simmons grinned. You would say that, the judge said. You were being modest, he added. Mrs. Jenkins, you hold a master's degree in library science. Before you retired, you oversaw the university's Special Collections Division for 15 years. I mentioned that was decades ago. However, I was pleased that Richard had so proudly recalled my early career. In order to support Richard's judicial career, I returned to part-time cataloging work when our children were born and finally left the field completely. I was reassured by Dr. Simmons that knowledge such as yours does not fade. Additionally, the judge set up a sizable operating fund to offer any professional help you might require. As the meeting went on, I became aware of Richard's entire creation. In addition to a priceless collection, the organization supported public programming about rare books and legal history, preservation efforts, and research scholarships. Emily sat next to me, her bright eyes taking in everything. Dr. Simmons looked thoughtfully at my granddaughter when she spoke about the collection's need for a long-term succession plan. The judge said that Emily, your grandchild, could want to continue the family tradition in the future. If you're interested, young woman, we'd be happy to set up an internship. Emily's face became radiant. She looked to me for permission and answered, it would be an honor. With a full heart, I nodded. Richard had been creating this, a significant legacy for the two of us, and possibly for Emily as well, while Andrew had been methodically embezzling my retirement money. A private tour of the collection's highlights, including rare first editions of legal precedents, autographed copies of well-known judicial judgments, and literary works that have inspired legal thought throughout history, was provided by Dr. Simmons to us following the board meeting. And here is the focal point of the collection, she remarked, pausing in front of a glass case in the middle of the main room. A little, leather-bound volume that didn't seem very noteworthy until I read the display card was within. John Adams signed the first edition of Thomas Paine's 1776 book Common Sense to Alexander Hamilton. This is worth about $2 million, Dr. Simmons said, and I sighed, struggling to find the right words. 7 years ago, Judge Jenkins outbid a number of prominent museums to purchase it at auction. Stunned by the realization, I whispered after he passed away. Dr. Simmons gave a nod. The judge gave the collection's trust independent purchasing rights and directed that some purchases continue even after his death. Mrs. Jenkins, he was constructing something that would last for generations. With a solemn gaze, Emily pressed closer to the glass. Did Grandpa purchase this with the knowledge that he would never see it in the collection? Dr. Simmons praised the judge's extraordinary forethought and faith in people he left behind. She gave me a knowing smile as she looked at me. He claimed that Eleanor would appreciate the importance of patience and making plans for a time after one's own life. Victor joined us at the end of the trip after spending the morning completing the transfer of curatorial power with the legal team of the repository. He said, "Everything is in order, Mrs. Jenkins." I questioned, peering at Emily. "The board has officially recognized you as chief curator, with complete discretionary control over acquisitions, programming, and staffing, including internships." "Of course. The operational endowment contains money set aside especially for succession planning and educational programs." I was given a folder by him. "These documents spell out your rights and obligations. The yearly budget is very substantial." I blinked in amazement when I saw the figure when I opened the folder. "Is this the yearly budget? For operations only?" Victor smiled slightly as he stated that the judge thought cultural preservation should receive adequate financing. "The budget for acquisitions is distinct and significantly bigger." Just before we left, Dr. Simmons gave me a little box. "When you took over as curator, the judge left this for you to deliver." There was an old brass key inside, obviously symbolic rather than practical. Richard's handwritten note, addressed to Eleanor, who always had the secret to everything important, was attached. "As usual, in spirit, the collection is yours now. Make good use of it, my dear." I grasped this last gift from my husband, tears stinging my eyes. Richard had been subtly making sure I would finally prosper all these years, while I had assumed I was just getting by without him. Emily gave me a spontaneous hug outside the repository. "Wow, Grandma, this is amazing. The internship opportunity and the collection. Grandpa seems to have envisioned the ideal future for us both." I added, grinning through my tears, "He always did think ahead." Andrew texted me again, and my phone buzzed. Now more demanding, more urgent. "Tomorrow at 2 p.m., our return flight will touch down. To stop this catastrophe, we must get together right away. I've had conversations with their family lawyer, our family lawyer, and never mine." "Dad wants more?" Emily saw my look and inquired. "Yes, tomorrow they will return home." I sat up straight, feeling strengthened by the revelations of the morning. "They anticipate that I will be perplexed, contrite, and prepared to grant them access to my accounts again. Instead, they'll find the Jenkins Collection's chief curator," Emily remarked, wearing a little, ferocious smile that was reminiscent of Richard's. "That's right." As a physical reminder of Richard's belief in me, I slipped the brass key inside my purse. "Don't you think it's time we were ready for their return? Would you be able to meet at my house tomorrow night, Victor? Diana here to talk about the financial records?" "Naturally, Mrs. Jenkins." Victor wrote something down on his calendar. "Do you want me to bring along legal advice as well?" I gave this great thought. "Sure, but avoid abrasive advice. Someone sensible and measured. Setting limits and enforcing penalties is the goal here, not completely destroying relationships." Nevertheless, Andrew remained my son. I treasured his children, especially Emily. I wanted to find a way to move on without facing criminal charges. I reasoned that Richard would have also preferred that. Whenever feasible, justice should be balanced with mercy. "Will you be here tomorrow, Emily?" I inquired with my granddaughter. She paused. "You mean to be present when Mom and Dad get back? When do they learn everything?" I told her, "Only if you feel comfortable. It's not your fight." The way Emily squared her shoulders reminded me so much of Richard that it broke my heart. "Grandma, I'll be there. You should not confront them by yourself." I thought about the rapid changes of the previous day as we drove home. My family was on vacation using stolen money, and I was a purportedly defenseless widow eating a lonely birthday lunch yesterday morning. With my financial independence back and a clear plan for the rest of my life, I was now the chief curator of a collection worth millions of dollars. All because Richard had made plans based on what he saw in our son that I couldn't or wouldn't. All because I had forgotten I had strength, and he had seen it in me. Confrontation, hard realities, and unpleasant reckonings would await us tomorrow. Patricia and Andrew would not readily give up their sense of entitlement. But for the first time in years, I felt completely ready to take a stand and assert my true position as a woman of substance, purpose, and resolve rather than as a handy source of money. Allow them to return home to discover their accounts depleted and their presumptions disproved. At last, I was prepared. To ensure you don't miss the next installment of Eleanor's adventure, remember to hit the notification bell and subscribe to our channel. Will her kid be held accountable for what he did? When the family learns the truth, how will they react? Post your guesses in the space provided below. For maximum effect, I set out the living room with Richard's leather chair at the head of the room, positioned with quiet authority. Clean stacks of Diana's prepared financial records, tagged and color-coded for convenience, were stored on the antique coffee table. The folder detailing the true value of the Jenkins collection, my curator's credentials, and the brass key from the repository on the side table. Victor was the first to arrive, followed by Catherine Ellington, a composed elder law specialist. Diana arrived next, with a laptop for a presentation and more financial documents. Shortly after, Emily sneaked in, sitting next to me with a resolute but pale expression. "Are you certain about this?" she muttered. "You don't need to face them head-on. Everything could be handled by the lawyers." I gave her a hand pat. "Dear, there are some topics that must be discussed in person. It is necessary to witness some truths." It was precisely 6:30 p.m. when the doorbell rang. I could see Patricia standing stiffly next to Andrew as he paced on the porch through the window. Neither appeared content. Diana said, "Showtime," as Victor stepped forward to answer the door. Before Victor could properly lead them inside, Andrew rushed in. "Mom. What on earth is happening? Are you aware of what you've got?" He paused suddenly, surveying the gathered crowd. "Who are these individuals?" "Emily. Why are you here?" "Hi there, Andrew." "Patricia." I spoke in a cool, collected tone. "Have a seat, please. We have a lot to talk about." Patricia stood there with a thundering scowl, her designer clothes disheveled from travel. "A committee meeting is not necessary. Whatever you have done to our accounts, you must correct it." "Your accounts?" Diana opened her laptop and arched an eyebrow. "Maybe before we move further, we should make ownership clear. Who is this?" Andrew made a contemptuous gesture toward Diana and demanded. "Forensic accountant Diana Reeves," she said calmly. "Over the past 9 years, I have been examining your mother's systematic financial exploitation." "Sit down, please. You may find the visual aids in my presentation to be enlightening." And Andrew's face lost its color. "This is absurd, Mother. Regardless of what these folks have informed you. These people have told me nothing that I haven't verified myself," I interrupted forcefully. "The documentation is self-explanatory. Unauthorized transfers, embezzled money, and false representations over 9 years. The charge of fraud is grave," Patricia yelled. At last, she collapsed into the couch. "To keep you safe, we have been handling your money." "What do you call that?" I gave Diana a nod, and she flipped her laptop to show a graph that compared withdrawals to upscale purchases. "Last year, I spent $43,000 on jewelry, $27,000 on golf club memberships, or maybe the $93,000 European trip was a necessary cost for my financial security." Andrew's cheeks turned red. Financial strain, business difficulties, and the children's schooling have all weighed on us. Years ago, the money for the children's education were fully supported. Victor spoke up. "As you are well aware, Judge Jenkins created those trusts independently." "Who are you exactly?" Patricia insisted. "Harmon Victor. At Judge Jenkins' request, I have been in charge of the Jenkins Trust for the last 15 years. Andrew's face changed from one of defiance to one of perplexity. "What does Jenkins believe?" "Years ago, Dad's estate was resolved. The part that's visible? Indeed. I bent over. Andrew, this is what your father expected. He witnessed what you were developing into and what you had already started to do throughout his lifetime. That's ridiculous. But there was a hint of doubt in his voice. For the first time, Catherine Ellington spoke in a distant professional tone. Judge Jenkins placed the majority of his assets in a different trust that would be managed by Mr. Harmon until Mrs. Jenkins was 75. She moved papers around the table. These documents attest to the validity of the judge's worries over possible financial exploitation. Andrew did not touch the papers, he just gazed at them. This isn't allowed. Catherine told him that was perfectly legal. As well as the proof Ms. Reeves has gathered about your embezzlement of money from the accounts you did manage. Patricia said that evidence could support criminal charges for financial elder abuse, fraud, and theft. Are you facing criminal charges? Over family money? You can't be serious, Eleanor. I've never been more serious, I said, steadily looking into her eyes. You took more than $340,000 from me, used my retirement to pay for your extravagant lifestyle, and left me to eat a sandwich by myself on my birthday while you took my money to explore Paris. Emily moved next to me, speaking quietly but firmly. Dad, I saw the posts on social media. Everyone was present. Grandma Patricia, Jason, Michael, Mom, and you. Everyone, with the exception of me, since I wouldn't lie about your destination. Desperation began to seep into Andrew's face as he turned to face his daughter. You don't get it, Emily. This is a family issue that is getting totally out of hand. I completely understand, Emily said. I am aware that you have been defrauding Grandma for years, that you lied to me and everyone else, and that you abandoned her on her birthday. Patricia's cautious poise faltered a little. There was nothing that we stole. For Eleanor's benefit, we were handling her finances. She doesn't know anything about money. Everything was always handled by Richard. Did he? After taking Richard's letter out of the folder, I read it out loud. Ellie, never forget the steel in your back that initially captivated me to you. The quiet intelligence that so many mistakenly believed to be passivity. I raised my head. Andrew, your father never thought I was powerless. You made that up as an excuse for what you did. I recalled Andrew's childish expression of displeasure as he ran a hand through his hair. This is crazy. Dad would never have established a secret trust behind my back. Victor attested that he did. The judge prepared himself with great care. He put his worries in writing, created a trust with unwavering legal safeguards, and made arrangements for Mrs. Jenkins to be informed of everything at the ideal time. I added subtly, the moment when you showed your true character. Andrew's first amazement gave way to bare calculating as he glanced at me. There is therefore more money. All right. Actually, that's excellent news for everyone, isn't it? As a family, we can resolve this misunderstanding and go on. I was initially stunned by his presumption that he would still have access to these recently disclosed assets after everything. Diana cleared her throat. Maybe this is a good moment to talk about the plan for restitution. Compensation? Patricia gave a disbelieving echo. Diana explained that we have developed a number of possibilities for the plundered monies, ranging from asset liquidation to structured repayment. Of course, if Mrs. Jenkins decides to pursue that line of action, these civil remedies would be in place of criminal charges. Andrew and Patricia finally appeared to realize the truth of their predicament. This was not a miscommunication that needed to be cleared up. There were actual repercussions for this accountability. With a hollow voice, Andrew remarked, "You can't be serious. Your family is us." "You are, indeed." It exacerbated the sorrow of your treachery. I sat up straight in Richard's chair, sensing his support. This is what occurs presently. Catherine has drafted a restitution agreement, which you will sign, promising to pay back every dollar you have stolen. You will give up any right to handle my money or gain access to my accounts. Additionally, you will write down your acknowledgement of your actions. Or, Patricia argued, but her tone was unconvinced. I just said, or I'll file criminal charges. The proof is thorough and unquestionable. In Georgia, financial elder abuse has serious consequences, including possible jail time. The ensuing hush was deafening. At last, with a touch of pleading for the first time in his voice, Andrew said, "Mom. Despite everything, we are still your family. Legal agreements and threats are undoubtedly not the best course of action." To his surprise, I answered, "I agree. Honesty, respect, and sincere concern for my well would have been preferable. You had always had that choice, Andrew. You made a different decision for 9 years." Emily broke the silence. "Dad, Grandma has provided you with a route that keeps you out of jail. That's more giving than most individuals in her situation would be." Andrew looked betrayed as he turned to face his daughter. "Are you siding with her?" Emily calmly responded, "I'm siding with the truth and basic human decency." The restitution agreement was passed across the table by Catherine. "This paper must be reviewed and signed within 24 hours. Mrs. Jenkins will then look into other options." Andrew did not touch the document, he just stared at it. "What if we sign? Then what?" I added, my voice a little softer, "Then we try to rebuild some sort of relationship, if possible. With precise expectations and limits. Andrew, I don't want to lose my family. But they won't take advantage of me either." Patricia jerked to her feet. "This is extortion. Before we sign anything, we must consult our own lawyers. Though I should point out that my firm has already drafted a criminal complaint, ready to file if required," Catherine answered, "by all means, with ease. The 24-hour period is unchangeable." I called after Andrew and Patricia as they made their way to the door. "Another stuff." They hesitated and grudgingly turned around. "The Jenkins collection at the Savannah Rare Books Repository now has me as its chief curator. I will be very busy with the position's substantial responsibilities. Emily has also agreed to work there as an intern." In another situation, their expressions of blank incomprehension would have been hilarious. I reiterated that the Jenkins collection is valued at about $10 million. "You were unaware of yet another aspect of your father's heritage." Andrew's face fell flat. 10 million books, but we've been having financial difficulties?" I admitted that I didn't miss the irony, "but it appears that your hardships have allowed you to travel in first class and stay in 5-star hotels with ease." There was silence in the room after they had left. Emily tenderly squeezed my hand as she reached for it. "Grandma, you were great." Victor gave a nod of agreement. "Judge Jenkins would have been proud. You were remarkably calm about that." With the adrenaline of conflict finally fading, I let out a trembling breath. "Will they sign, in your opinion?" "They'd be fools not to," Diana replied pragmatically. "Public humiliation and maybe criminal conviction are the alternatives." Recalling the calculating expression that had taken the place of his first shock, I remarked, "Andrew has always been practical when his own interests are at stake. He will sign." As our legal team packed away their materials, I found myself drawn once more to Richard's study. Now the room had a different feel. He had so meticulously outlined for me a bridge to the future, not a temple to the past. "Didn't you see it all coming?" I whispered to his picture. The falsehoods, the exploitation, and even my eventual need for a purpose outside of family responsibilities. Emily stepped out into the door. "Grandma? Are you all right?" I grinned at my granddaughter, this unanticipated ally who stood for optimism for the future. "I'm more than all right, my love. I feel completely alive for the first time in years." "What takes place tomorrow?" "We start over after they sign." Simply, I responded, with truth as our basis this time. Emily nodded thoughtfully. "It won't be easy, but nothing worthwhile ever is. Things worth having are worth fighting for," Grandpa used to remark. In a lot of ways, he was correct. I touched this physical representation of Richard's belief in me, the brass key from the repository. Shall we now go over those internship catalog records? After all, the Jenkins collection cannot cure it itself. 1 year later, I stood in the main hall of the Savannah Rare Books Repository, observing the magnificent room converted for tonight's gala. Literary treasure displays are illuminated by the warm glow of crystal chandeliers. Prominent visitors were served champagne by white-gloved attendants. Savannah's cultural elite, scholars, and collectors. The focal point of it all is the recently enlarged Jenkins collection, which now includes additional items I personally chose. Grandma, the mayor just arrived. At my elbow, Emily emerged, radiant in a midnight blue gown, her curator's badge shining. Additionally, Dr. Simmons wants to make sure you're prepared for the ceremony of commitment. I'll be right there, tell her. I smoothed my own gown, which was made of green silk and cost more than I could have ever imagined a year ago, when I was trying to keep my expenses under control while my kid was draining my bank account. Since my 75th birthday, a lot has changed. You've done it better than you expected, Mrs. Jenkins. Arriving in a dapper tuxedo, Victor Harmon looked dignified. The repository board is extremely happy with the growth of the collection under your direction. The foundation was laid by Richard, I remarked modestly. All I'm doing is expanding on his idea. Victor retorted, you've accomplished much more than that. The digital preservation project, the fellowship program, and the educational efforts. All of your inventions. It would make the judge very proud. My eyes strayed to the far side of the room, where Andrew and Patricia stood, both of them uncomfortable in their formal wear. Today, precisely 1 year ago, they had signed the restitution agreement. They agreed to repay every dollar they had stolen in a planned manner in order to avoid facing criminal prosecution. It had not been an easy year for them. As word spread about Andrew's financial misdeeds, his legal career plummeted. As their resources shrank, Patricia had been compelled to reduce her social obligations. As they had to face the fact that they were living within their means, the European holiday had faded into the past. Are you prepared to talk to them? Victor followed my eyes and inquired. I answered, as ready as I'll ever be. We'd been re-establishing our connection slowly. Stilted family dinners, deliberately neutral chats, slow strides towards something like respect, if not the easy trust we'd formerly shared. I knew Patricia loathed each restitution payment date, but Andrew had fulfilled them all. I crossed the room, taking the visitors' congratulations as I went. I could see the tightness around Andrew and Patricia's eyes and the artificiality of their grins as I got to them. Mom. Andrew gave a rigid nod. Well done on the gala. It's pretty, amazing. I said, thank you for coming. Having family here tonight is so meaningful. Patricia surveyed the lavish setting, the affluent customers, the precious books in the lighted cabinets. The collection seems to be doing very well, she said, her kind exterior betraying a trace of resentment. I verified that it is. Scholarly interest in the new acquisitions has grown significantly. Andrew made an uncomfortable change. Emily seemed to be settling into her new role. I followed his eyes as my granddaughter confidently described a rare book to a group of donors who were captivated. It comes naturally to her. After she graduates, the board has already talked about giving her a permanent job. Andrew reluctantly acknowledged that it was a more realistic job choice than I had given her credit for. This modest admission that he had been mistaken about Emily's literary preferences was a step in the right direction. He would have written off the entire archive as a waste of precious resources a year ago. Mrs. Jenkins, we're ready for the dedication whenever you are, Dr. Rye. I was saved from the uncomfortable conversation by Simmons, who came to my side. Excuse me, I said to Patricia and Andrew. Duty calls. I noticed my other grandchildren among the crowd as I made my way to the podium. Emily had insisted that Jason and Michael come, and they looked present but bored. One more tiny step toward family reconciliation. They stopped posting disparaging remarks about their elderly grandmother on social media. I couldn't tell if it was out of self-preservation or newfound respect, but I decided to see it as a step forward. As I sat at the stage with the brass key from Richard's present dangling from a chain around my neck, the audience became silent. Both a sign and an accessory. Distinguished visitors, colleagues, friends, I said in a calm and firm voice. Today marks 1 year since I became the main curator of the Jenkins collection, ushering in a new era. Tonight, we commemorate the wider objective Judge Richard Jenkins envisioned when he founded this collection 15 years ago, in addition to the growth of our assets. Instead of the condescending tolerance Andrew had showed his bewildered mother for so many years, I saw genuine curiosity in the faces in front of me as I talked about preservation, education, and cultural heritage. I also saw respect for my expertise and vision. I am happy to announce the Jenkins Fellowship for Literary Preservation in celebration of this occasion. I continued. In order to preserve literary treasures for future generations, this yearly award will assist up-and-coming researchers in the fields of digital humanities and rare book conservation. The room echoed with applause. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed Andrew's face change from aloof politeness to sincere surprise. This was unexpected. I hadn't expected to be establishing new legacies instead of just overseeing the ones that already existed. The initial endowment of the fellowship is derived from money that has been recovered in the last 12 months. I said, looking straight into Andrew's eyes. Transformed from personal loss into societal benefit, from exploitation into education, from betrayal into legacy. The audience became silent, most of them oblivious to the intimate meaning of what I had said. Andrew, however, was aware. Patricia was aware. They eventually realized, based on their facial reactions, the extent of what they had almost destroyed, not just money, but also impact, meaning, and purpose. Emily joined me in a quiet spot after the wedding while guests mixed and looked at the collection. She squeezed my hand and whispered, "That was perfect, Grandma." Particularly the section about transformation. Even if only our family is aware of the connection, I acknowledged that it felt appropriate to give credit where the fellowship funding came from. Emily noted with a tinge of satisfaction that Dad appeared to have been struck by a truck. I believe it finally clicked. He stole more than just cash from you. It was honor and purpose. I remarked softly and interestedly, and now both have been restored. By the end of the evening, Andrew came up to me by himself, Patricia having gone to talk to friends on the other side of the room. Mother, I paused, seeming unusually unsure. The fellowship is an impressive effort. Thank you. He clearly struggled with what he wanted to convey while using the reparation money in that manner. I didn't anticipate it. Andrew, what were you expecting? With real curiosity, I inquired. He gave an uncomfortable shrug. I'm not sure. That you would use it for personal expenses. Go. Upscale goods. I guess the items we bought with it. I answered softly, that was never who I was. Which, if you had viewed me as a person instead of a resource, you might have remembered. I hadn't seen him respond like this since I was a child, but his face flushed with humiliation. I'm starting to realize that. Although it wasn't an outright apology, it was a recognition, and maybe that was sufficient for the time being. I reminded him that the last payment for restitution is due next month. Our financial tie will then come to an end. Then, with a hint of doubt in his voice, he asked. After that, we keep mending our bond as a family and as mother and son. I erect my shoulders. If you're willing, with mutual respect and well-defined boundaries. Slowly, he nodded. The sun I remembered peeking through the facade he had been putting on for so long. That would be nice. I was by myself in the main gallery as visitors left and the repository personnel started the meticulous task of putting valuable books back in its safekeeping. Somehow, the place felt sacrosanct. Not only because of the priceless volumes it held, but also because of what it stood for, Emily's future, my rebirth, and Richard's vision. I thought about all that it had unlocked as I felt the brass key at my neck, not just the collection, but also my own latent might, the silent force Richard had always seen in me. It was there even after I had forgotten about it. I said in a whisper to the empty room, "You were right, Richard." Almost anything. It had been an unexpected, unpleasant, and ultimately transforming trip, from being abandoned on my 75th birthday to serving as the head of a famous cultural organization a year later. On my birthday, I was left to eat lunch by myself since they had used my retirement funds to travel to Europe. However, Richard had planned for this very treachery, which started a series of discoveries that would not only shield me monetarily but also give my final years meaning. Emily showed up in the doorway as I was packing to go. Are you ready, Grandma? The vehicle is awaiting you. Yes, I grinned as I gave the collection one more glance. Now, my collection in every way. I'm prepared. The brilliant sky was filled with stars as the warm savannah night greeted us outside. I sensed Richard's presence next to me as our automobile drew away from the repository, not as a specter of the past, but as a collaborator in building this surprising future. Despite the fact that they had undervalued, disregarded, and taken advantage of me, they had unintentionally released me. At 76, I was defining my later years rather than just getting by. On my own terms, with dignity, purpose, and the inner power that had always been there. Conclusion. That life-changing 75th birthday was 5 years ago. One of the Southeast's most prestigious rare book collections is now the Jenkins Collection. Even though I'm 81 and showing no signs of slowing down, Emily, the associate curator presently, is being prepared to someday replace me. Because of my readiness to forgive without forgetting and Andrew's slow acceptance of boundaries, we have managed to achieve a tenuous peace. I suppose Patricia still resents the lifestyle changes brought about by the restitution payments, but she is still coolly friendly. Sometimes my grandsons come to visit, and their old condescension has given way to genuine interest. 12 bright researchers have received support from the Jenkins Fellowship, and their work has helped us better grasp how to preserve literature in the digital age. I think of Richard every time I read their research updates, and how he would have loved this legacy that goes much beyond our family. The National Book Foundation unexpectedly nominated me for a Lifetime Achievement Award in Preservation and Education last month. On my 82nd birthday, the ceremony will take place. A fitting symmetry that completes the circle of my journey. I shall wear Richard's key around my neck and carry the wisdom of these remarkable years with me as I stand at the podium to accept the prize. That age is a transition rather than a conclusion. That even while it hurts, betrayal can occasionally lead to unanticipated purpose, and that it's never too late to take back your dignity, your authority, and your freedom to write your own story. When I became 75, they abandoned me. I had no idea that their treachery would lead to the most significant chapter of my life, a chapter that I wrote myself. I want to thank you for traveling with me before I leave. Please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and tell someone who would benefit from hearing that it's never too late to take back control of your life if Eleanor's story of resiliency and reinvention inspired you. Tell me in the comments what you would have done if you were Eleanor.